welcome to Phillip Island, Victoria in Australia. What a setting we have for this great sporting contest, the Little Penguin Sea to Dune race. Nervous moments always as they gather on the beach, the tension mounting, and away they go. There's the defending champion, wearing his familiar navy blue and white, great waddling style. Another pre-race favourite though, losing touch with the pack. Maybe that's why. A few too many fish in the day's feeding. There's a familiar face, Skip McIntyre, 8 times a champion back in the 90s, a very successful coach now, keeping a keen eye on proceedings. This the leading group, 1 or 2 still able to put on a show for the camera, others just ploughing straight over it. Some resorting to shortcuts. Sad that cheating has crept into this beautiful sport. The judges will have a look at that. But up at the front, the pace is relentless, closing in on those sand dunes that will offer a bed for the night. The fatigue starting to tell. Who's got the finishing kick up on the outside? What a turn of pace from that one, whichever one it is. No answer from the rest, and he takes victory. What a win. There we are, into the Burrow, building an extension with his winnings, and back tomorrow to try and defend his title here on Phillip Island.
Welcome everybody to a sunny day on Phillip Island Penguin Live TV. Did I say sunny? It is another dark and gloomy and miserable night here on Malau. And Malau is the traditional name of Phillip Island, given to it by the Bunurong peoples, who are the traditional owners here on Phillip Island. They had lived here for thousands of years before European settlement happened, and it is their land that we have the absolute pleasure to view our little penguins on tonight. So I'd like to pay my respects to the elders past, present and emerging, and also acknowledge any Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islanders watching or listening on tonight with us here. So thank you guys. I would like to next introduce Ranger Rachel. Come on in, tell us what you're doing with us tonight.
Thank you so much, Afiq. And again, I will be monitoring your questions. Please pop them in. It's a special night tonight, and I'll pass some of the questions on to Viv. Yesterday, the penguin came home at 6:25, somewhat similar weather, and I'll give you a few moments to guess the numbers of penguins that came home. Thank you.
Thanks, Rach. So yes, everyone put in your guesses for how many penguins came in last night, and Rachel will try to figure out who was the closest in there. It definitely isn't going to have been me. I went way overboard. But Rach is right. We are here tonight for a special live stream for the Victoria Nature Festival, where we, not just we, where a lot of different organisations want to encourage people to connect with nature and connect what's in their backyard. So I will get Rachel in a couple of minutes to pop the website in the comments, but there's the Victoria Nature Festival website, which has got lots of different activities. There's lots of different live streams like this and workshops and lots of stuff for kids to do over the school holidays as well, to connect a bit with nature, which is a little bit harder when so many different places are under different restrictions, but there's still a lot you can do, such as, tonight we have penguins, and tomorrow morning the Royal Botanic Gardens are doing a live stream on bandicoots, not our bandicoots, but on the southern brown bandicoots, which is going to be pretty cool, I imagine. So have a look on the website and see if there's anything you guys would be interested in doing, but that is what we're here for today as well. I would also like to, again, thank you guys, and I'll do this every time, and I will continue to thank you guys so much for watching. For myself personally, I would be locked up in home if you guys weren't watching, so I really appreciate you guys continuing to watch our gorgeous little penguins. Here at Phillip Island Nature Parks, we are a non-for-profit organisation, so we are also self-funded or tourism funded, which means that all of the profits from any ticket sales or any food and beverage sales or souvenir sales from any of our venues goes directly towards our daily conservation, research and education work that we do here. So it's all really, really important, and we wouldn't be able to do it without you guys. For those of you who can't visit due to restrictions or due to just being in a totally different part of the world than we are here, I know a lot of people already have made donations or adopted a penguin or another animal via the Penguin Foundation, which the link is in the description if anyone would also like to add to that today, and we really greatly appreciate that too. Every little bit does count for us, while we're so, well, not able to have as many guests as we usually would, unfortunately. So at the moment, we are able to have people visiting us from regional Victoria, which is great. It gives us some people to talk to and get to have some people enjoying the perfect little penguins in person, which is great. But we are very, very ready to allow everyone else back into our sites when it's safe to do so. So fingers crossed that'll happen soon, and we'll be able to have everyone visiting again, and we can just pretend like the last 2 years never happened. Okay, so for once, the penguins are not interrupting my little talk, so I'm excited. So tonight, like Rachel said, the penguins came in last night about 25 past, so they're coming in later tonight, which is very generous of them to do so. But it is similar conditions to last night, with the difference being the tide. Last night the tide was a lot higher, and tonight it is lower. So the penguins we are viewing tonight are the little penguins. They are the world's smallest species of penguin. Their scientific name is Eucalypt minor, which means good little diver, and that is exactly what they are. They are good, they are little, and they dive, so very, very creative. And so being such a small penguin means that they are very easily taken on by predators. So they've got a lot of different mechanisms that they have evolved to be able to hide from predators. And their biggest one is what we view tonight, which is waiting until the sun has set to cross the beach. So crossing the beach, as you can see, it's quite a large beach. Oh, as you can see, and I say I'm doing things, but it's not doing them. They've got quite, oh, we can see Ranger Sonia down there. Hello, Sonia. We've got quite a long beach tonight that the penguins have to cross, and so it is very, very scary. Besides these rocks right in the middle, it is just sand. So you've got a dark coloured bird on light coloured sand, and they are very exposed, and it is terrifying. We call it their daily dash. And so these penguins, they want to make sure that the sun has set, because all of their predators, mainly birds of prey, will go to bed when the sun has set, because they're mostly active during the day. So they're going to come in, and they're going to start coming in very soon, I imagine. And so what they're doing now is they're probably not too far off, being quite, I haven't seen any rafts because it's so misty, and we've cleaned the cameras, and there's no point cleaning them 100 times because the rain and the mist is just wrecking them tonight. So we can't see any rafts, but right now they're out there, they're forming their rafts, and the raft is them forming their groups, watching the sunset together, nice and romantic, as they decide when it's safe to come in. And then they're all chatting away, going, hey guys, can you come with me? I don't want to go alone. Let's all go together. Safety in numbers. And they make their hucking sound, which you may have seen in the comments tonight. So Rach and I will demonstrate as always. So they go, which when you are here, you get the pleasure of hearing that as well. Unfortunately, we don't have, well, you get a little bit of it in the intro, I believe, but we don't have any live sound, unfortunately. And then they'll hit the edge of the water somewhere along this section here, usually. Sometimes they like to tease me by going right around the other side of the camera, but lucky for us, Rachel has a radio on with the direct messages from our penguin counter, who will tell us when penguins arrive, so I can start looking for them if they're not right in front of me. And what they'll do is, because it's a high tide, I imagine that they won't immediately cross. I imagine they're going to stay on the edge of the water for a little bit, sort of looking both ways before they cross, because it is a really long beach and it is really scary. But lucky for us though, and lucky for the penguins I guess too, the penguins have 5 different pathways that they cross across this whole beach, and I'll zoom out and show you the whole beautiful beach. We've got a good pile of rocks across the whole beach tonight, and their main pathway is here with us, and that is, we believe, at least partially because of all of this dark rocks for us here, providing extra camouflage for the penguins as they cross, which means they're a lot harder to see if any predators happen to still be awake. So that is what we're waiting for tonight. I really thought they would have started by now, so they've caught me by surprise. I think we might go to last night's penguin numbers. What do you reckon, Rach?
Sounds good. We've got a really close one, JD, who guessed 555.
Okay, yeah.
We had 563.
563 penguins, yeah. See, I was way over. So we're having a little bit of a lull in penguin numbers at the moment, and my theory, it's educated, but it is still just basically a wild guess, let's be honest, is that they have synchronized their breeding, so they've all laid their eggs at around the same time, which means they're all going out to get food at around the same time as they swap with their partners and each take turns to sit on eggs versus getting food. And that might be why we have a bit of a lull. And so hopefully that means any day now they will go back up to the numbers that we were having last week or the week before, where we're having 1,500 as we get fully set to our breeding season, because we have had an official start to the breeding season and it's still too early, but I'm still going to have a look around at some burrows a little bit later and see if there's any chance of seeing any fluff balls yet. But I think I'm definitely getting my hopes up there. But we'll see what happens. Anyway, I'm going to have a little bit of a... Let's attempt to see if there's any hope at seeing raft, since they're taking their sweet time tonight. Yeah, no, not a chance, is there? Yeah, I don't know why I bother, let's be honest. That's all right. Let's go have a look around. Let's see what other wildlife is going to... I just saw Lindsay. Lindsay is one of our security. I saw him point, so now I'm scared to move the camera away, because if they're right there and I move away, that would just be typical. All right, let's have a good look. If you see penguin, yell penguin. I can't hear you, but I'll be amused when I check the comments. Okay. No, Lindsay faked it. He hasn't seen anything. I'm going to tell him off later, don't you worry. I'm like absolutely terrified. The second I turn away, Rachel's going to get a thing in her ear saying, "There's penguins on the water's edge." And I'll be like, "Oh, of course there is." But we have a penguin. We have a penguin. Hello. Okay, let's talk about this dude, and Rachel will, I'm sure, tell us when the first group of penguins arrive. So, all the penguins that came home yesterday, and probably even some over the last couple of days, they're going to still be home. They don't go in and out every night. That is way too exhausting. So they're going to stay home for generally a day and a half. So for 2 nights, and then go out the morning after. So this one will probably go out tomorrow morning, at a guess. And so they stay out in the water for a few days this time of year, up to a few weeks through winter. So this penguin is like, all right, come on guys, it's dark. Where are you? This is getting ridiculous. I want to socialize, or I want to do a little bit of breeding behaviors, maybe nest building, I don't know. But that is what this one's doing, who's also turned his back on me, which is very rude. I don't know why penguins do that to me. Unbelievably rude. Okay, I don't see anyone else coming out and about yet. As you can see, it is truly miserable weather, but we get our lovely pond, which is always fun. Let's go back to the beach, because I don't want to miss the first group arriving, since it's so rare that they arrive after I start talking, not in the middle of me starting to talk. Alright, so the other thing I wanted to talk about tonight as part of the Nature Festival is we released our newest episode of our podcast, I believe last week or earlier. Yeah, last week. So episode 9 of the Nature Unfiltered podcast, which I've also got my lovely Rachel is putting in the comments for you guys, for anyone who wants to listen. And our podcast basically takes you through lots of different things throughout Phillip Island. This episode is for the Victoria Nature Festival as well, so it is taking you through the Rhyl wetlands, which is a Ramsar wetlands, which basically means it's universally, so it is universally acknowledged as a specific protected wetlands. That's the word. Protected is the good word there. So all the Ramsar wetlands are sort of not governed specifically across very well. I should have prepared what I was trying to say because this is just coming up as gibberish. But the universe, they're recognised around the world as being important. And the reason for that is generally because of migrating birds. So wetlands are very specific habitat for a lot of birds that will migrate seasonally. So they'll spend half the year in our wetland and maybe another half in the wetland in China or in Japan or somewhere like that, in a totally different place. So it is important for us to have these Ramsar wetlands recognised around the world so we can look after both areas of the bird's habitat. Because if we only look after the habitat here and it's not being looked after where the bird spends the other half of its life, it's probably not going to be very helpful. So, and we've got lots of beautiful birds through the real wetlands as well. So that, I believe Megan takes you through that episode there. And so all of the podcast episodes are done with Ranger Megan, Sky and Jordan, as if you're a regular watcher with us will know very well who they are. Now, I wasn't expecting to have talked this much and not have penguins yet. I started the podcast. I started the stream a little bit earlier expecting penguins to be early because it is so dark and miserable, and they're just like, nope, we're not going to do that. So let's have a question, Rach.
Yeah, sounds good. We have Jean D. is asking, is it possible for a penguin to become injured with a laceration that would scar and prevent feathers from regrowing on that part? And also, following that, Lisa Kathy Wilson, but if they do, let's say if they do regrow, how does the feathers get waterproof? Will it waterproof at all?
Sorry. I saw that question last night when I went through the comments, and I'm like, that is a great question. I have no idea. I didn't have time to research it because I didn't think Rach would ask me a very hard question as the first question of the night, but that's okay. I have absolutely no idea, not a clue. And I guess, as an educated guess, it would really depend on a bunch of different things, such as the thickness of the scar more than anything. Like if it's a fairly thin scar going around, I imagine that the nearby feathers would be able to interlock around it enough that it would keep the waterproofness happening, because penguins have about 10,000 feathers on their tiny bodies. They're tiny, tiny bodies, and sort of interlocked like a bit of a zipper to keep them nice and dry in their 2 layers. But if they had a really fat scar, so say it's, like sort of this big or bigger, there's no way the feathers are... Oh, penguins! Oh my gosh! They snuck up on me. I would say that there's no way the feathers would be able to cover a large scar, and therefore those penguins would probably have a really tricky time surviving. But the other thing as well is surviving with a laceration that big in the first place. So what are the chances that a penguin gets a laceration and survives long enough for it to heal? I don't know the answer. That is definitely something worth having a think about. I'm not too sure, but that is a really good question, and I'm getting a lot of really hard questions lately. I think Rach is picking on me. So
they're getting really good at it.
They're getting good at it. Yeah. They're getting good at asking the hard questions. So, oh gosh, the camera really does not like this weather. I've just zoomed out a bit so you can see both the rafts. I'm going to come back in a second, but look at their little reflections because of the wet sand. It's so cute, and you can see just why they're so obvious to any predators flying overhead as well. So you can see that they slow right down when they get into the rocks, because one, they've got to climb over the rocks that are, about this half to the size of their body, and then they've got to... But they've also can slow down a bit because they are much more protected. They are a lot harder to see, and my camera won't even focus on them, which is proof that I'm not making things up. But put in your guesses to how many you think were in this group, and hopefully Sally isn't too busy and she's able to tell us over the radio how many were in this group crossing the beach at the minute. All right, let's zoom out a little bit. But as you can see, they're making life hard. So Sally, our penguin counter, she is in the skybox over to the left. I'm like, is it the left on your screen too? But I'm pretty certain it is. All the way to the left. So as you can see, these penguins, they're not going in a single file. That would make her life way too easy. They're a nice big fat chunk. So there's at least 10 penguins deep along this main part here, and as they jump over the rocks, which makes it really hard. So basically what Sally's... Oh, we got a shell gritter nice and early. I'll come back to shell gritters. But basically, when they get here, so when they're almost home, Sally will call the start once they're about halfway across the beach. But once they're almost home, they start to do a sprint because there's no running back to the water because they're too far away. And when they do that sprint, they spread out a little bit and they're closer to single file, which makes them a lot easier to count. And I say that and they're not sprinting. Come on. Here we go. You can see a few of them getting ready to go now. All right. And so basically, some rangers like to count the penguins twice, once at the start and once at the end. I find that very, very difficult because basically until they're doing this sprint and they spread out, it's really, really hard to count them anywhere near accurately. So the way I found it easier is just to count them once and really, really hope you haven't muddled it up. So I do a very rough estimate when they first leave the water, very, very rough, and then count them more specifically once they do their sprint and they spread out and make it a lot easier for me. Sorry for that motion sickness. The camera is not playing nice. Okay, it's really not working. It's there's a lot of mist and condensation in the camera, I'm thinking, and it is just making it impossible to see anything right now. That's actually truly terrible. I'm sorry, guys. What I might do is I might take us back to the beach since that view is just not doing anything for us. Let the camera remember how to do camera things. Please, camera, please do camera things. We'll have a look at these ones and we'll have a look once we get back to the highway. We can get some look at these penguins up close and possibly see some more shell gritters. Okay, I went a little bit close here as well. Did Sally give us a number? Is that what that was?
She did, yes. Yeah. And Marie Lehman was really, really close. She guessed 75. We had 74 in that row.
Oh, very close. Good work. You could be a professional penguin counter, and believe it or not, that is a real part of my job description. I really should put that on my resume, shouldn't I? Think. What do you think, guys? Here we go. We've got another little group sprinting across, and the highway. Run, run, run to the highway as fast as we can. You can't catch me. I'm the penguin man. And here we go. We've got our lovely Waterley penguins, and this camera is having a much better time looking at them than the other camera is. That's beautiful. You're not going to stop for long enough for me to have a look at beaks. We were having a bit of a play around yesterday trying to see how good the penguins were going to behave for us, to let us look at their beaks to see if I could show you a bit better the difference between male and female penguins, but they weren't playing very nice at all. So I'm multitasking here. I'm rambling on while I get ready that view, while we look at some penguin bottoms, because penguin bottoms, as they waddle past, are just the cutest, most ridiculous things in the world. Not biased. You're wrong. So now go back over to the beach camera, which I actually have to press that up here as well if it wants to make a difference for you. And I want to talk about this shell gritter. So, oh no, that's not the shell gritter. Shell gritter has gone somewhere else. That's okay. So the shell gritters are how we know it's the breeding season before we actually see any eggs or anything. So the female penguin will start shell gritting. Basically, what we notice is we see them going the wrong way down the highway. We see them walking towards the beach instead of away from the beach. Now, I think that might be the shell gritter. Let's have a look-see. And a female penguin will generally do that a few days. I don't know why I thought I could do that. I've already worked out that the camera's not being nice. A few days to 5 days before she's about to lay an egg, she's going to eat lots of little tiny bits of shell grit from the beach. Wow, that is... Ooh, come on, camera, I believe in you. If we all just believe really strongly, maybe the camera will work. And so she's going to eat lots of little tiny bits of shell grit, which are just literally just crushed up pieces of shell. You might see them at pet stores for birds especially. And it's going to restore her calcium levels, because this mama penguin, she has given her calcium from her own body to create the hard shell of her eggs that she's about to lay. And so she's just become a little bit calcium deficient herself, and so she's got to replenish those stores before she lays her egg to keep her body nice and safe and sound. If anyone... the camera's a little bit worse this time. If we're lucky, Sally will give us another number for this one. But if anyone gets it right with the fact that the camera is not doing so well under tonight's conditions, you really should feel proud of yourself, because it's really difficult tonight. It's just very much not playing along. But yeah, so anytime you see a penguin walking backwards, oh, and look at the highway, there's a penguin walking backwards. I like it when they listen to me and do what I want. Okay, so I'm gonna zoom out because this camera is just upsetting me now. And we're gonna go have a look at the shell gritter instead because, at least we can see them. So we can see this penguin. Oh gosh, she's chunky. Love that. And you can see just having a look around going, is that a good bit of shell grit? No, that wasn't very good. And she's gonna keep on walking and look again for bits of shell grit. So that's exactly what she's doing. So, and I can't keep up with her, so I'm gonna just do this bit and wait for it to pop up again on this side. And so she's just having lots of looks for little bits of shell so she can restore her levels. And so we see it all the time, and as we get to the breeding season we see it lots, and we see, I think, a couple of weeks ago we started seeing 5. We had like these little mothers groups of penguins of groups of 5 or more going back to the beach to collect that little bit of shell grit. And she's not going to the water, she's going to eat her bits of shell and then she's going to come back in later tonight. She's not going to stay out there all night or anything crazy. Now, I believe we may have gotten another number for the other group. Is that correct, Rachel?
We do.
Okay, so as I said, if you've guessed this group correctly under these conditions, real impressed. So, what'd you get?
There are 2.
Whoa! Oh! My camera just decided to go night vision and now it's better. That's exciting.
We've got 2 guessed really, really close. Matt Furley and Sarah guessed 64. We've got 63.
63. So you guys are doing
Well
excellent.
done.
Well done, really. Oh, I'm so glad the camera switched. I wasn't quite sure how I was going to survive doing a whole live stream only looking at the highway because this was not working for me. Oh, do we have a traffic jam? Please have a goose cause traffic jam. No goose? No? Oh, but we've got a shell gritter running down. That was actually quite like speed. Maybe a lot of people ask, how do penguins walk so far without trouble? The truth is they have a lot of trouble. They're not graceful. So penguins have adapted beautifully for their life in the ocean, but that makes them clumsy and ridiculous on land. So everything about their body physically is for swimming. So they've got their knees, which don't bend very much. So they're sort of always locked. So they if you tried to walk around without bending your knees, you'd look a bit silly too. You'd probably waddle. Their knees are actually up in their stomach, so up near their belly button. They're not straight either, they're bent. So I'm not going to do the silly impression that I know some other rangers have done. But really, if you want to walk like a penguin, you've got to crouch and then walk, and imagine you've also got a giant belly full of fish because their bellies are huge and their center of gravity is really low. So they have to lean forward, otherwise they're going to fall on their backs. And they also have to waddle because of that low center of gravity and their knees not bending, which means walking up and down hills, walking over rocks is especially tricky for them, more shell gritters, which is lovely. And that is why sometimes they fall over and run into each other, and they're clumsy and hilarious, and I love them so much. Is that another shell gritter? Oh, good. Love shell gritters. It means we're going to have babies. And so that's why I've completely gone off a tangent, but that penguin that looked like it was going down the hill very fast, she probably started to trip a little bit, and so she had to speed up not to fall over. When you're walking down, walking and you're trying really hard not to fall over, so you like do this little run jump so you don't throw your face into the ground instead. I think that's a bit of what it was. Okay, let's go back to my... Oh, hello. Back to this. All right, let's go for a question. Wow, Rachel's got a full page of questions. I need to stop rambling and answer your questions.
Very good one. Good timing. We've got Rick McCarthy asking, do penguins use the same burrows? And what about the younger penguins that's coming without a burrow? What do they do?
Great question. So, yes, penguins do use the same burrow. Generally, as a general rule, and that's the same for most things. So they use their own burrow for their whole life, and the way they find their burrow is through their very excellent memories. So they're using landmarks and their own little road system to be able to find their ways home. As for my usually common, it is because these penguins are not monogamous. They get divorced at a similar rate to humans, anywhere from 18 to 50% any year. So what often happens is they'll stay together for 3 or 4 years, and then they'll get divorced and find a new mate. But they always stay together for the kids. They stay together for the whole breeding season. They don't divorce until the start of the next breeding season when they're doing their mate selection. That's when they're going to start finding, decide if they want to keep their old penguin or find a new penguin. And at that point, one of those penguins, and we believe, but we're still not 100% sure, we believe it is the female who finds a new nest, but there has been some possible changes in the research, so we're sort of trying to figure that one out a little bit more. As for the chickies, so the chicks, they leave the nest when they're between 8 and 12 weeks old. They go on their gap year and become fully fledged, independent, excellent penguins. And at that point, they have to find a new home. And they don't just pick a box and move in immediately. They sort of, they do a little bit of, oh my gosh, I've forgotten her little, I went to say Little Red Riding Hood, but not quite. This porridge is too hot. This porridge is too cold. This porridge is just right. And so they do a bit of this, and so they will go through some different boxes and burrows and decide which one's right. And quite regularly, is they're going to get kicked out. They might move into a home that is already owned by someone. Oh, hello, penguins! They might move into a home that's already owned by another penguin. And so when the owner of that home comes home, they have a little bit of a territory fight, and the senior penguin almost always wins. This this looked like mating, but I'm not sure. I think that one of them wanted to mate and the other one not so much. So that was some special cuddles not quite working out, is what I'm going to go for that one. We try to keep things PG rated here, guys. And yeah, so I want to talk about the burrows a bit more because I haven't talked about them too often, and I think it's really interesting. Let me go to the highway cam so we can see their beautiful faces. Is that the penguins are very clever and very lazy. So we found that the penguins seem to prefer the wooden boxes, which you would have seen a little bit earlier. And that is because a wooden box is literally placed on the ground, nice and easy. The penguin doesn't have to do any work, and when it rains or winds, those boxes don't fill up with sand and mud and dirt and all sorts of gunk like the natural burrows do. So they're not having to constantly dig it out. Whereas another shell grid, 2 shell, 3 shell, 4. Okay, that's it. I'm just going to stop counting them because that's not working for me. There's several shell gridders here. And so they want the box, okay? And so if they can't find a box, they'll then try for an unoccupied burrow. So, you know, a hole that hopefully doesn't have someone else living in it. Look at them, little mums group. Because again, they don't have to do as much work, but for those ones, they then do, you can see how shiny and blue they are. Grass is not exciting. Thanks, Rach. And so as an absolute last resort, the penguins will build their own home. And the penguins have these great little strong feet for that. So they've got pretty decent claws on them, which a lot of people don't really expect to see on a penguin. But that is because they use their feet to dig the burrow, sort of like just digging, sort of like when you see dogs like digging, being silly and stuff. They're doing that, and they use their beaks as well to sort of maneuver things out of the way a little bit too. So they've got their very powerful feet. So I'm still always going, will I see a bandicoot? I love bandicoots. But that's silly because it's wet and miserable, but worked out. So let's watch them swim if the camera will let me instead. All right, Rachel, another question.
Thank you. From Jared Galia, will a penguin know if they have lost another penguin out at sea or on land?
Will they know if they've lost another penguin? I'm going to assume you mean their mate, like their partner. That's tricky. I think they would know depending on what's happening. So if it was the breeding season and, you know, you're the mum penguin, you're sitting on your eggs and your partner doesn't come home, you're going to realise that penguin hasn't come home. But any other time of the year, say it's through winter, if they lose their partner, when it comes to the mate selection at the start of the breeding season, they're probably just going to go, well, I'm just going to get a new penguin because my other penguin's not here, is what I would assume. But what we found is they don't tend to have too much. They don't care about each other. That's a really horrible way to say that, but they don't form like strong attachments to each other like we do, or like animals who mate for life do either. They are definitely just sort of like, they've got their sense of community for a lot of things, but they don't have specific care for any specific penguins unless it's their own chicks, and even then they can be a bit heartless sometimes. What was I? Yeah, so like they're really good in their community with crossing the beach in their groups for the safety in numbers and helping each other preen. So when they stop, you'll often see them rubbing their beak through their feathers to preen, to smooth out those feathers, to remove dirt. And as you could imagine, their beak can't reach the back of their head or their neck, so they need to help each other out with that. And so to do that, they do have to help each other. It's sort of you scratch my back, I scratch yours. So, but otherwise they don't care. They don't help feed each other. They don't do anything else kind and generous to each other. They just sort of help only when it's necessary for their own help. Good question, Rachel. Let's go for another question. I want to get a few questions answered tonight.
Yeah, about the time. From Dini Gettington. Sorry if I get it wrong. How long does it take for the chicks to hatch once the eggs are laid?
How long? I'm going to go to this penguin while we answer that question. I'm going to do that on here as well now that I've decided what I'm doing. How long does it take the chicks to hatch once the egg's been laid? It takes around 35 days. What? Oh, that camera was a bit slow, wasn't it? Woo! Okay, I am having some weird lags on my screen right now. So about 35 days. And so throughout that process, that egg needs to be constantly sat on for warmth. Otherwise, it'll go cold and die and stop developing. So it needs constant attention. And so what'll happen is the parents are going to take turns. So one parent will sit on the eggs while one goes and gets food for themselves only. Because again, they're selfish. They don't help each other out too much. So they're only going to get food for themselves. And then they're going to take turns swapping for food. One thing that's really cool about that, and really terrible as we talk about how selfish penguins are tonight, is there is one penguin in each partnership who is more selfish than the rest of the penguins. I don't even know what is happening with this camera, but it's very weird. Okay, that's fine. I'm having a lag and it's super confusing, but that's fine. I guess I will manage. So one of the penguins is extra selfish and takes care of themselves more. So they might come home quickly, feed their chicks, and go out for a second fishing trip to feed themselves and not give their partner a turn. Or they might go out for 5 days when their partner only goes out for 3 days at a time. And so they're just like, no, I don't care. It's fine. I only care about myself, and I'll feed the babies, of course, eventually. But yeah. So that's really interesting that there is always one. So I don't know if you can think to your relationship, who's the selfish one in your relationship? Is that a fun game, or is that a really terrible game? I'm going to go with, is it me or is it David? I'm going to say it's probably me, just because I'm really needy. I'm like, feed me, always feed me, give me more snacks, I need it. All right, another question.
It's a good one. From... let's see, Marina Rosary. How do penguins find their way home?
How do penguins find their way home? Great question. I touched on it very briefly, so I'll go into more detail now. And you can see here we've got the highway in the top screen there, which is a very clear path. The penguins made that path. We didn't make it for them. We clear it and we sort of mow the grass a little bit, and that's only because of safety access to the beach. The penguins made that. And this path up the hill that we're looking at on the big screen, the penguins made this one as... Okay, well, did the penguins make it first or did the people make it first? Anyway, the penguins make footpaths through the area, and there's lots of little footpaths in a lot of different places that the penguins have created. So they're using their excellent night vision to look at landmarks. So for here, the main landmarks are us, the beach, and our viewing stands. And then they're going, okay, I'm going to take the first left up to this path up the hill here, and I'll take the right here, and blah, 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 to figure it out. That is Rach telling me we're out of time, but like, we're going to stop. I'm just giving up any hope at trying to keep to time now. What's the point pretending I'm going to do it right? And so, yeah, so that's how they do it. So it's like, I like to think of them as a little bus, and so they've all got their own stops. Oh, the camera won't. Oh, yes, you will a little bit. Okay, I'll go somewhere else. Let's go to the highway because you're going to be there any second. We'll look at these cute little bums going through. So they're using these landmarks and these little footpaths to find their way home. We did at one point think that it possibly had some smell to do with it, but we ended up finding out that that actually wasn't the case, that they don't smell to find their way home. They are just visually using their landmarks. And then through the breeding season, when they've got chicks, they know where the chicks live because the chicks don't tend to stray too far from home. So they know, go home, the chicks will be there. And then they also know their chick's voice. So any of you, especially any mums out there who have kids, if you've ever heard your kid cry in a crowded place, but you know it's your kid's crying and not anyone else's kid, it's weird. I never used to believe it until I had my own, that I'm like, there's no way you could recognize one baby's cry over another. You can, and the penguins are exactly the same. They know the sound of their own chick's call versus any other penguin chick's call, which is really cool when the penguins are older. So once they hit about sort of 5-6 weeks, they stray a bit further from their home, hoping to get fed and to have a bit of explore, stretch their legs. And sometimes they forget which home is theirs. So they go, I'm just going to stay here today. And they just spend the day in a different box or a different burrow. And you end up with like 4 or 5 or 6 chicks in one burrow. And you're like, well, this definitely isn't right. Because the penguins almost always lay only 2 eggs at a time. Like, very, very often only 2 eggs at a time. 3 is virtually unheard of, and same with 1. So if there's more than that, you've got a little bit of a daycare situation happening. So when that is the case, it's a good thing that the penguins look at their footprints. The penguins know the call of their own babies to be able to find their chicks, and so the chicks can get fed, because the parents don't want to feed anyone else's babies, only their own. All right, another question, and then I'll think about stopping. I'll consider it.
From Elodie and Erin Wild, is it only one type of penguin that comes to our shore, our beach?
Great question. Yes, it is. So we just have, in Australia, we have the one kind of penguin, which is little penguin. You may have heard of it as the fairy penguin or the blue penguin or the little blue, because it's had lots of names. And in New Zealand, it's known as the little blue penguin. But it's all the same species. So it's all this one penguin here. Look at the shell gritters swimming. And in Australia, we just have this one species here. Very rarely we might have a random penguin wash up, and that's generally a penguin that lives in New Zealand, has gotten a bit lost and has washed up on our shores by accident. When that happens is either us or the Zoos Victoria will rehabilitate it depending on what its needs are, and then it would get released, hopefully, to find its way back to New Zealand. So I know we've had a Fiordland penguin wash up once, and I know recently in the news there was a yellow eye on the other side of the bay in Victoria had washed up too and had been released. So it's not super common. It's not like you're going to see one giant penguin walking with these penguins, but it is something that does happen. All right. Okay. I'll behave. One more question.
One more. We've got Janine Alat asking, isn't there a shark nursery near Seals Rocks because of all the seals that are around?
A shark nursery? Is that what you said, Rach?
Yeah.
Is there a shark nursery? I have never heard that.
No.
So the only regular sharks that we have around here are your Port Jackson sharks and your little sharks, and they're totally harmless to penguins because they're eating rather small fish. There's no way they'd eat a penguin. Where the penguins spend most of their time fishing, they're not encountering any big sharks at all. So sometimes you'll hear a story of a big shark making its way nearby, but that is very rare. And we've always heard that for the most part, the big sharks are too big, that they're not interested in a little penguin. They're more interested in getting something larger to eat. So it's not really anything that would be too much of a problem. But yeah, I don't know if I've ever heard of a shark nursery nearby. Maybe there's another colony of seals somewhere that has a shark nursery. That's pretty cool though.
Yeah.
Pretty clever of a shark going and building their, well, not building, but creating their nursery near seals. That's really cheeky. Okay, so let's go back to the penguins jumping over rocks as we end up. I'm like, if a bandicoot comes, I'll talk for 20 more minutes. Not 20, I'm lying. Don't hold me to that if a bandicoot suddenly appears. So again, I just want to issue, is it a challenge or is it a demand or a request, is just for the Nature Festival, I think it's really good if everyone can try to find some time, spend some time outdoors. If you're in lockdown, you've got your allocated time, you're allowed to exercise. For me, I have either gone out taking photos to sort of get me out of the stir craziness that is sitting at home all day, or I take my son out and we collect leaves because he's 3, so there's not much else he's interested in. So we collect leaves and glue them, and there's lots of really cool things you can do, especially with kids now that we're on the school holidays. Hello, penguins. And so lots of free activities going around that you can do locally. So it's like scavenger hunts and really cool things. So I think everyone should just try to find some time this week, if you're not already going out daily, to just get outdoors and appreciate what you've got naturally in your own backyard. Because although we have penguins right here, and that's awesome, you've still got amazing wildlife in your own backyards, I'm sure of it. And so, and while you're there as well, maybe pick up some rubbish. If you've got gloves or hand sanitizer on you, because gross. So that's what I like to do. Is I like to copy Stephen's 3 for the sea and try to pick up 3 bits of rubbish while I'm out and about. Because even though I don't live like on the beach, it still can make its way into the water. If it goes into the storm drain, it's going to make its way to the ocean eventually. So it's really worthwhile removing rubbish and helping protect the penguins. Or if you live in America or somewhere else, you're going to be protecting you are still kind of going to be protecting the penguins, but you're going to be protecting your own beautiful wildlife. And I'm sure you've got a lot of beautiful wildlife living in your oceans up there that are worth protecting as well. So on that note, are there more penguins appearing? Because I can't say goodbye without penguins on the screen. That is not okay. This is my delay tactics. Rach is like, I know what you're doing. It's not working. Where are the penguins? Okay, we'll just hang out with this one penguin. Fine, I don't mind. Hello, penguin. And we will say goodbye. And we will be back tomorrow. So tonight was a special live stream. So we're going back to our usual, which is Monday, Wednesday, and Saturdays. So tune in with us again tomorrow at around about 6:30. We'll see what the penguins feel like doing for us then. And we'll see you then. We are going to get Rachel in here. We're going to do our signature goodbye in the penguin language. And there we go. All right, bye, guys. Bye.